Welcome into the off-brand Avalanche podcast. We are officially 1 week as of recording this from the first Avalanche hockey game, an exhibition game even before that, but we've got the Blues on deck for Sunday. We will have that wild exhibition game, which is pretty fun, and today we got some roster announcements, so a lot going on in Avsland this week. Let's talk roster first. You know, the obvious massive surprise here for a couple of reasons is that Vlad Kamenev is not going to Edmonton. First of all, it's surprising because, you know, he was kind of the 14th forward all year and apparently has now fallen completely out of the top 17. Also weird because it means they're taking 17 forwards and 11D, which is a little bit surprising, but what are you guys' thoughts on this one?
I counted 18 forwards, I thought.
Not without Kamenev. The cut of Kamenev leaves us at 17.
Oh, okay. Well, my thought with this is immediately, like, what is the future of Kamenev in Colorado? You know, it's like, a couple of years ago, he was, you know, one of the valued pieces that we were getting back from the Duchesne trade, and all of a sudden now it's like, dude, like, is he even going to be an Av at the start of next season? Is he going to even be in our AHL system, or are the Avs going to try to, like, completely move on from him here? Like, see if he can find a home somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, if they can get anything for him in a trade, like, if you can get a 6th-round pick at this point, I think that might be the way to go, just because, like, they clearly don't value him very highly at this point. Yeah. But, Zach, what do you think of this surprise?
Yeah, shocking, like you guys had mentioned. I don't know what else to say about that. It is interesting to look down the road and predict his future, because in my opinion, this means he's not going to be an Av going forward, so we'll see what happens.
I think, I agree completely. I feel like if they wanted him on the roster moving forward, then he would be going to Edmonton.
Especially
this is really the end of the road for him. The other thing that surprised me just a little bit was that, so I thought for sure if they were going to take 17 forwards, they would have brought McDonald on D, just because he can play forward. They did not do that. They brought both Byram and Timmins, as well as Lindholm and, you know, kind of the other guys at the bottom there. McDonald, another one of the cuts. So
yeah, I thought McDonald was going to be a surefire guy to make this roster, like just like you just said. Especially with the
versatility.
I mean, but then at the same time, you're all bringing Barberio, and we've seen Barberio like play both forward and defense before. So
that's fair.
Excuse me. I mean, do you really need like another guy like a Barberio that's gonna, you know, transition on both forward and defenseman? And if we're getting to our 17th forward at the end, it's a little bit scary anyways, and it's not like you should really be trying to rely too much on McDonald. I mean, in my opinion, Barberio is probably a better player. We've seen him, you know, be a solid initial player, especially on the back end and sometimes on the fourth line this last season. So, I mean, in my opinion, that's not as much of a surprise as the Kamenev decision.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing that did surprise me a little bit, though, is both Tynan, Dries, or all three actually, Dries, Tynan, and Logan O'Connor did make the team. So, not so much surprising that Logan O'Connor did, but if you were to ask me like a week ago who would be more likely to make the roster, Logan O'Connor or Vlad Kamenev, I would have said Kamenev.
Yeah. Just the guys that jumped him are a little bit weird.
Yeah.
You know, Kamenev was the first man in for injury for most of the year, and now apparently he is not even the 6th man in.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like a little bit surprising. The other one that I guess isn't a huge surprise, but a little bit Adam Werner made a little bit of noise in training camp, and you know, I told Marshall that I don't think the Avs view him as a viable potential starter in the future, and I think he took it to heart. Clearly he was listening, because he went out and proved me wrong. He had an incredible camp, and towards the end of the camp I was actually leaning towards him ending up going over Hutchinson. He did not. Hutchinson did get the nod, but I mean, it's all good things for Werner regardless. A little surprising that he didn't end up making the roster.
Yeah, there's a little bit of buzz, actually, that the Avs could potentially take 4 goaltenders, which would not make any sense. But there was a little bit of buzz going around that. And then I thought that Werner was going to for sure make the roster over Hutchinson, but I guess they had different views, obviously, than us. But, yeah, like you said, Billy, he had a terrific camp. And, I mean, like, his future is like as bright as ever, in my opinion.
Definitely. All right. So, are there any other any notable things that you guys want to talk about? I think we should touch a little bit on all three of our prospects that we kind of thought might go are going. So that's Byram Timmons and Shane Bowers are all headed to Edmonton. Particularly excited about Bowers just because Bowers is a guy that I've been excited for a while, and I didn't expect him to be here. I kind of expected Timmons. I thought there was a really good chance Byram would go, and I wasn't so sure on Bowers, and especially with an injury going on during camp. But now he is going. So I don't think that any of these guys will play unless there's some injuries. Connor Timmons, I think, is the likely one, might be the 8th defenseman. So if anyone gets in, I think it'll be him. But which of these rookies excites you guys the most? Let's start with you, Zach.
I'm liking to see Byram going the most, just because he gets the experience going with the boys. Yeah, he gets to see what NHL playoff hockey is going to be all about, especially coming off this break. It's going to be intense. Yeah, he's definitely going to learn a lot. He's had that welcome to the NHL moment in training camp, kind of, with Nathan McKinnon. So that's already a good start. Yeah, this can only help him in the end.
Yeah, I agree. But for me, like you were saying, Billy, I think out of the three of them, Timmons definitely has the best shot to get some game time. And so for me, he's the most exciting one that I'm waiting to see what happens. I think that if anyone gets hurt, I think they're going to give Timmons the next man up, in my opinion.
You think even over Barbaria?
I kind of think so, man. He's another guy that, I heard, had a really impressive camp.
Yeah.
And he's been waiting for this moment for a long time, and he could be the next kind of dark horse story like we had with Makar in the playoffs last year. There was a lot of when Makar was out with his undisclosed illness or injury or whatever it was, there was a lot of talk that Timmons was gonna make step up and be that next guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some gains from Timmons.
Yeah, I'd love to see him. To me, the Timmons-Girard pairing is super intriguing. They rolled it out a couple times during training camp, and it looked pretty solid. To me, if you, with what the Avs system currently looks like, if everything went perfectly, you're imagining Byram and Makar on the top pairing, and then you're imagining Girard and Timmons as your second. Mm-hmm. So I really like to kind of get a look at that, see what it does look like, and I'm super excited for that. I think that's... if they hit their ceilings, that's got to be one of the best second pairings in the league.
Oh, easily. Just imagine down the line, Byram and Makar, and then Timmons and Girard. And this is another thing, I just don't really see the Avs moving on from Timmons, just quite yet. At least give him some, NHL time and see what we actually have with him, because it'd be a little bit of a stinger if we just give him away and he ends up flourishing in another organization. If we kind of look at it, the Avs, top end depth of defensemen is pretty solid, but behind that it's pretty thin. Outside of Timmons and Byram, there's not a whole lot of super solid defensive prospects, and you never that was something that the Avs struggled with for a decade or more, was just defense's depth, and then now finally Sakic has a formidable group of defensemen that he could roll out there any night and be a force. So I just don't really see them giving up on Timmons unless it's something like a blockbuster type trade, and he's one of the key pieces. But I'm still really high on Timmons. I am excited to see what he can do. I hope we can see him get some ice time in Edmonton here.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think they're going to move on. I kind of, earlier on in the year, I thought it might be... I thought they might look into trading him for a top 6 forward, but after this camp, I don't think there's any way you do that. Mm-hmm. You at least got to give him a shot next year. Because, regardless of what happens, whether he plays a game or not in the playoffs this year, what his camp really means is that next year, this is a guy that's on your roster. Mm-hmm. This is a guy that, unless he absolutely falls off in training camp heading into next season, what this means is that he is basically a lock to make your opening day roster, which I kind of want to ask you guys, roster spots are starting to fill up, and after this camp, I think that Timmins might be higher on the NHL pecking order today than Bowen Byram. So, based just on our number of roster spots, if we can't find a good deal to move anyone out, is the downside of the emergence of Timmins in training camp that you maybe have to look into holding out Bowen Byram for a second year? Whether that's sending him back to the WHL, asking him to go play in Europe, whatever the case may be. Is that a possibility?
That's a hard one for me, honestly. Because I do think Byram is NHL ready.
I agree.
And so I think the Avs are going to try to do whatever they can to get both Byram and Timmins on the ice, whether that's moving on from Ian Cole or Zadorov. I don't really think that you're going to move on from Graves, being that like he had a terrific year this year, like a breakout type of like defenseman year. Led the NHL in plus minus for a reason, and I think he was top 5 in blocks. So it would be hard to see them moving on from Graves right now, but I could see a world where they do move on from Zadorov or Cole. And I don't really know opening night next season if they're gonna end up rolling the both out like on their starting lineups, but I do see a world where like either Byram or Timmins are the second defenseman until we see an injury happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's maybe an underrated aspect of this is, maybe you ship out Zadorov. Timmins kind of slides right nicely into that bottom third pairing role as the right-handed shot on that pairing, and then maybe have Ian Cole and Byram rotate a little bit. Yeah. Maybe Byram doesn't have to play 82 games in his rookie year, but can still be on the NHL roster. It's not ideal to be sitting him too much, but it's also not ideal to send him to the WHL again. No, so that's kind of just that balancing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen in the past that the Avs are not afraid to like rotate defensemen based off of like who they're going against. Like Bednar will consistently switch to Dorov with like a more offensive minded guy like Barberio, or not like all the time this happens, but with Lindholm as well. So we've seen it in the past. Like if Bednar thinks that we need some more defensive-minded defensemen, he'll like rotate in Zadorov a little bit more. But if he thinks that our defense can hold like steady against his team and needs a little bit more offensive firepower, then he'll rotate in Barberio. So I think that is an option for next season moving forward. Just kind of rotating in Byram, letting him get a feel of the NHL before he's like more like consistent and ready to take a full-time job.
Absolutely. Zach, I'm curious, what do you think about this? Who do you think is higher in the pecking order next year? Do you think Byram kind of makes that jump over Timmins, or do you think kind of like we're at in the playoffs today, do you think Timmins maybe gets that nod first?
I think Timmins probably gets the nod first in the playoffs, but overall, the Avalanche are for sure wanting Byram to take that step over Timmins. So in the long run, I could see, them playing Byram. I think, like you guys said, Byram is NHL ready, and that to me means you should not send him to the WHL. You should not send him to Europe. He's an NHL player. He should be playing in the NHL. And one more comment about Zadorov. He's been that guy that's prone to mistakes in the past. You've seen these rumors about him and maybe Bednar not liking each other too much. Unfortunately, to me, he's played himself into that spot where he's the trade bait right now.
And he also has a high ceiling.
Yes, he does, and that's unfortunate that we have to get rid of him because I like those big hitting defensemen. But his just being prone to turnovers in bad areas in the defensive zone in front of the net, it's just not good. And like I touched on, it's just him and Bednar could have some friction there.
To be honest, if we were looking at anyone that I'd like to ship out, it would be Ian Cole and Eric Johnson. But obviously Eric Johnson is kind of here to stay right now just because of that absurdly bad contract.
Right. And so I also really see Ian Cole staying too. He's that more defensive-minded player that I feel like Bednar is trying to style his team around at this point.
Yeah. So this is not a bad problem to have, though.
No, not
this
at
is
all.
my
Yeah,
point.
absolutely.
Like, if you're trying to find roster spots for like a couple of the best defensive prospects in the NHL, then obviously your team's in a pretty solid situation here. So, obviously we're just making a podcast and we're not like the front office having to make these tough decisions, but it is like kind of nice to speculate and see how the roster's going to look next season. I do like some veteran presence, which would be kind of hard to like move on from Ian Cole.
Right.
I mean, he has won a Stanley Cup in the past. Eric Johnson too, but just like the young depth on this Colorado Avalanche defensive core right now is so exciting. So, I mean, 5 years down the line, we could realistically see like 4 or 5 guys that could probably be deserving of a first pairing job on a lot of NHL teams. So.
Yeah, and the other last kind of thing I want to hit on the kind of who do we ship out debate is the biggest reason I'd ship out Zadorov is that he's the youngest guy. He's got a little bit of trade value, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to force him into the seventh defenseman kind of role, and that is something that Ian Cole could do. You know, he might be a little bit frustrated by it, but a veteran defenseman, kind of reliable guy, is kind of an ideal 7th defenseman candidate. So he could be a guy that doesn't play as often. You know, if Byram is showing out, then he doesn't play much, but can still be there. There will be injuries. He'll get into games. I don't have a hard time viewing Zadorov in that role. I think he's as someone, you know, a young guy, a first-round pick, still quite a bit of talent there. It's hard to view him as a guy who could just slip into that 7th defenseman role.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that. Like the 7th defenseman role, you're definitely going to want some guy that is a veteran and doesn't really take it too seriously. And it's not really like you're wondering what Ian Cole's potential is. You already know what Ian Cole's potential is, whereas like with Zadorov, you're not entirely sure. So, like you were saying, Billy, Zadorov probably does hold quite a bit higher of like trade value at this point. And it'd be better to like ship him out before he gets to that 7th defenseman spot than not, you know. So
I actually got a question. What do you think Zadorov fetches on the market at this point?
Ooh,
well,
I would say a 2nd or a 3rd.
Okay.
Yeah, probably alone a 2nd or 3rd, but I think he's a really nice like
a little piece.
Yeah, like so. I feel like if you could package him with a couple of like a prospect or pick and maybe like a roster player, you could probably
maybe a Zadorov, a Jost, and maybe even a Bowers or Kaut, which I know we'd love to hang on to, but it depends on what you're getting back, obviously. Yeah. Like, are we getting Brock Besser, the name that's been rumored to be available? Do you throw Zadorov into a package with a high-end prospect, a first-round pick, and maybe a Tyson Jost and see if that's enough?
Yeah, absolutely. Really quick, though, one guy that we didn't really talk too much about that's not coming to Edmonton is Martin Kaut. What do you guys think about that?
I think it makes a lot of sense.
I think
I think when we did our predictions before camp even started, we did our predictions, and I think Zach hit the nail on the head. He said if you told him he's not going to play in the Rangers game when we were devastated by injuries, and I think we might have even had Barberio rolling out as a forward in that game. If we weren't going to play Kaut then we clearly want to see ELC to slide, so we're not going to play him in the playoffs. Yeah. As much as we'd love to see him, the contract at this stage, as our window is just opening, is more valuable.
Absolutely. It would kind of suck for Kaut, though, if he went out and won the Stanley Cup and he wasn't there for that.
That would.
Yes.
That would definitely be rough.
I mean,
how does that work with like the cup rings? Does Kaut still get a cup ring?
I don't know. That's what I was wondering too.
I think he had to play 25 regular season games at least, and it's one playoff game, and then if you win it, yeah, that's it.
All right, yeah, because that was the other guy was Kamenev. That I was like, well, damn, this guy's played a lot of games. Does he not get a ring if we win the cup?
Yeah, over 25.
But based on that, without the playoff game, he might not. But definitely. So, I guess what the second half of this podcast is going to turn into is just our Avalanche return to hockey hypecast.
I do want to touch on one more NHL story.
Okay,
it's kind of shocking.
Go for it.
So the Arizona Coyotes general manager John Chikra has quit, which is pretty crazy. He quit, and it looks like he quit due to a disagreement with ownership, which is I mean he's the youngest GM in the league, and it kind of just looks like some pussy shit in my opinion.
He just signed an extension last summer, I thought,
right?
too. Like a 5-year extension.
I was reading the story, and it says he wasn't invited to a dinner with the CEO of like Exxon Energy or something, and he quit over that. So
wow.
yeah,
that's all speculation at this point. But good.
Yes,
gracious,
it is.
That's
Yes.
true. Like,
that is speculation.
but if that's true, that is some pussy shit. For lack of a better term.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah,
that's all I wanted to say about that, though. But it was pretty crazy.
Definitely not the best reasons for quitting, if that's what it actually is. I'm curious, what direction do they kind of go in? Because I don't know that I'd say that's a massive loss for them. They've had some questionable moves from the GM position in the past couple of years. The Taylor Hall trade didn't pan out very well, so is he maybe a guy that wasn't exactly, he might have been a little bit on a hot seat anyway.
It could be.
So it might not be they might not be hurting as bad as you would think to lose their GM like that. Although I will say I don't think he was a easy firing candidate, at least this offseason. But I think, maybe a guy that, how much longer would he have been in Arizona anyway?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really see him as he was really on the hot seat too much. I mean, he has made some pretty solid
but
moves to get them back.
It's warming
into
up a
contention.
little bit.
Yeah, it was warming up.
Yeah,
but
if they trading for Taylor Hall and then technically they got into the playoffs or into the play-in, but had this been a normal year, they would have traded for Taylor Hall and then missed the playoffs. So
yeah, but a lot of
that in itself is something.
A lot of that though is losing their the key backbone of their team with Darcy Kemper. So
yeah, but the GM's going to take a little heat.
Yeah,
without
absolutely.
a doubt, at least a little bit for that.
Yeah, I mean, last season they were, or it wasn't last season that they were a game away from making the playoffs. Yeah, they were going head to head with the Avs in I think it was the 81st game. And
yeah, they were real close.
Yeah, so
it was the Avs, the Coyotes,
and the Blackhawks.
And there was one more team. Yeah, it might have been the Blackhawks. But it just goes to show how forgettable you are if you don't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
We remember that we were in a race, but it's hard to remember who we were racing against because they all lost.
Very true. One thing we have not touched on, being that this is a hockey podcast, we do have the name of the NHL franchise.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
This is pretty crazy to me, actually.
I was thinking about that on the sports pod.
I was shocked.
So happy.
I was shocked.
I am so happy.
I actually am too. I kind of like it better
Kraken.
than Sockeyes now, but that's probably just recency bias. And it's crazy that I thought for sure it was gonna be Sockeyes. I was blown away when I saw it the next day.
I mean, on our sports pod, we said that Sockeyes is basically a lock.
Yes.
I said I want it to be Kraken, but Sockeyes is pretty much a lock. I was wrong. And the logos and the jerseys are sick.
I agree.
The logos and the jerseys are sick. I still kind of feel like the Kraken is a bit of a juniors hockey name, but it will probably warm up on me. It'll probably warm up on me, but no.
Okay, I want to clear this up
sick.
though, because it's already annoying me. This team is called the Kraken. Yeah. It is not the Krakens. Yeah. Like the Avalanche and the Wild, they are one of the few teams in professional sports that is not pluralized.
Yeah.
And as an Avs fan, I'm someone that gets tired of this because, you'll every once in a while, the Avalanches. And I'm like, no, that is not correct. And I've already heard so many people say the Krakens that I'm like, I want to get this out there.
Did I just accidentally say the Krakens?
I don't want to hear it. What?
I feel like I might have accidentally just said the Krakens.
I don't think that
I don't think I did, but
because
that's funny.
Reflecting on what I just said, I was like,
Maybe
that's what stirred Billy to have this conversation.
No, it wasn't. I was thinking about this last night.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to talk about this on the sports pod because I'm already seeing it on Twitter. People are like, "Oh, the Krakens! I'm a Krakens fan now," and I'm like, "No, you're not because it's not a Krakens."
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so welcome to the NHL, Kraken. Trying to go see your first game against the Avs and get absolutely smoked.
Oh yes.
I can't wait. I want to see. While we're on the tangent of the Kraken, who do you guys think are the major candidates on the Avs to end up on the Kraken?
Kamenev.
Kamenev.
I doubt it. I don't think they'd take him.
No, I'm saying a Donskoy.
That'd be brutal.
I think Donskoy, Graves, Zadorov, Jost, if they're still here, are kind of the big names thrown around. Maybe Francouz is a little bit of a dark horse, depending on what the other goalie situations around the league look like.
I was definitely thinking about a goalie, especially if Francouz and Grubauer both still have like solid years next season.
And I saw, Joe Sakic is a good GM. I have faith that he'll, wheel and deal around that time like we saw with Vegas. And hopefully nobody major gets taken.
Yeah, he could just package it for like picks instead. Just don't take the boys.
I'm definitely curious. I just have this sinking feeling. I love Ryan Graves, but I just have a sinking feeling that it's going to be him, which I don't love. No. But I don't know. It's just a gut feeling, I guess.
Yeah, that could definitely happen. I mean, if that's what it is what it is. The Avs, like we were just talking about, have tremendous defensive depth. So.
Yeah. All right. Let's get hyped for the playoffs here, boys, because I'm really excited. Man, I didn't realize how much I missed sports. I knew I missed sports a ton, and I underestimated it, Yeah. Baseball came back, and I was like, I've never been that big a baseball fan. I can't keep my eyes off the TV. I'm sitting on the couch all day watching opening day, and I'm like, I love it. I love having sports back. I'm watching some NBA exhibition games that don't mean anything, but they're still incredible. # Bowl season. But hockey is the big one. When hockey comes back, I will lose my mind with excitement.
Yeah, I think that makes at least two of us. I think it could probably make a third.
Oh, yeah, make it three. Make it three.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, but...
Yeah, so what are the things that you guys are the most excited for with playoffs coming up here?
Hungry ass Nathan MacKinnon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it for me there, man.
He's ready.
Nathan MacKinnon in the playoffs is another level. I actually, when I went on John's show, we talked about Nathan MacKinnon a little bit. It is incredible to see a player who is already so good just elevate even more in the playoffs. And, in that Calgary series last year, he was something to watch. And when he sets his mind to it, it's like, nobody is stopping this guy.
I mean, that's been something that's been consistent with him throughout his entire hockey career, man.
Even going back to the Mem Cup.
Yeah, I remember watching that game. It was like the Halifax Mooseheads and Nathan MacKinnon against Seth Jones and the Portland Winterhawks, and Nathan MacKinnon took over that damn game. And at the time, I was like, dude, if the Avs end up getting the first pick, that's going to be our guy right there.
Which is weird because, there was a lot of speculation that it would be Seth Jones because Seth Jones.
Yeah,
I wanted the Avs to take Seth Jones originally, and now I look back at that and I'm like, holy shit, what a fucking disaster that would have been.
That's why they're running the Avs and I'm not.
Exactly.
It's not like Seth Jones is a bad NHL player though, but he's not Nathan MacKinnon.
Right, and I was also 15, so I was didn't know what the fuck was going on.
But same. We were 15-year-olds who were like, hey, there's a Colorado boy.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably what swayed my opinion.
T-Birds, that's an organization we've all had some ties with. We've all played. You guys both played for the T-Birds, didn't you? I had a couple games in the T-Birds summer leagues.
Well,
Marshall
played
did
for the juniors.
For the RMJ. Yeah, you're not in the AAA team that he did, but you played T-Birds for the RMJ. I played a lot of the summer leagues for the T-Birds. We were really kind of closely tied to Seth Jones in a way. So we were rooting for him. But,
Billy.
Clearly the Avs weren't biased.
Do you remember, he played for the Hawks, too, Littleton.
Yeah. His name's on the banner
his name
up
was
there.
on one of the national championship
Oh,
banners.
yeah.
Is it actually on the banner?
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
it was.
I bet you it's still
crazy.
there.
So that's my main memory with Seth.
Yeah.
Well, now I hate him because Littleton was the worst.
But still, it was crazy walking into the rink and seeing Seth Jones' banner up there. Or his name.
Yeah.
There was another... I think there might have been another.
It's Nick and Drew Shore that were on that team as well.
Yeah, Nick and Drew Shore.
Yeah, the Shores.
Yeah, so that was a stacked
I played with
AA
Baker
team.
Shore a
It
lot,
was.
but I never played with Nick or Drew.
Yeah, Baker Shores definitely did not live up to the hype, I feel like, but
I feel like there just never was as much hype. But still, he was a solid kid to play with.
Yeah.
But moving on here, let's get back onto the Avs a little bit. Zach, what are you most excited about? What's another thing just looking forward to?
I'm excited for Nathan MacKinnon, obviously. I think it's time for, Cale Makar to show what he's got. He's going to take it to a next level, I believe. He's got that playoff juice a lot like MacKinnon does, and I'm excited to see what he can do, not only putting the puck in the net, but passing. And this guy can hit. This guy can hit. He's good at taking the body. He's a small guy. He'll take on anybody. I'm excited to see how he plays defense in this playoff round too.
I am too.
Yeah, I can't wait. Cale Makar very quickly has become my favorite player on the Avs, and I think that he's going to take another step. One of the things always going on around Makar, we talk about it all the time, is every team he's ever played on, he's been better in year two. This isn't quite year two, but with the full off season, this is almost like year two. And I would not be surprised to see, Cale Makar is my dark horse candidate for the Conn Smythe if the Avs do win it. The obvious one is Nathan MacKinnon if the Avs win. Maybe Grubauer can soften a goalie, but don't count out Cale Makar if the Avs win the Cup as your Conn Smythe winner.
Absolutely not. That'd be pretty dumb. But another thing I'm excited about is just a healthy Avs squad here, guys. I mean,
we have not seen that in a while.
No. A healthy Rantanen, healthy Makar, healthy McKinnon, healthy Landy, Kadri, Burakovsky, dude. I mean, this is one deep team, boys, and this is going to be a fun ride, hopefully, barring some crazy thing. But this is also not just a very talented team or a skillful team, but this is a very hungry team. I mean, we've seen it from McKinnon in this training camp, man. He's going out there and yelling at guys, biting at the boys, just he expects greatness not only from himself but from the rest of his teammates. And same with Bednar, guys. We've seen Bednar, we saw that clip of him just yelling at everyone, and that's not something we normally see with Bednar. And it's not necessarily saying that the Avs had a bad practice. He just wants to see this team be successful.
He's trying to make a point on something very important. And we've seen the Avs at times, not finish hits, not take the body when it's needed, and Bednar is stepping up and making sure the boys do that with the help of Nathan MacKinnon and Landeskog, showing the way.
Yeah, and another thing with Bednar is a guy who, in last year in particular, was winning games in the playoffs by out-coaching the other teams. And that's their NHL.com released some kind of rankings of their top coaches in the playoffs, and they had Bednar down at 14, which I took as a personal slight. Bednar, in the Calgary series and the San Jose series last year, stole games by out-coaching the other teams, and honestly, could have arguably been a candidate for the Jack Adams this year.
Yeah. I'm
really excited to see what he does with this opportunity to kind of make a deep playoff run with a solid team.
I mean, he's more I think he's one of the most underrated coaches in the league right now.
I agree.
I mean, especially bouncing back after that abysmal first season to taking his team to the playoffs 3 years in a row, and really helping this team rebound from that season. And then one thing that's kind of overlooked about Bednar is he's won an AHL championship and an ECHL championship. So he's just looking for that trifecta now.
Right.
Yeah, and I think he's got a good shot to do it. Nathan MacKinnon said in an interview last week, maybe earlier this week, this is the first time he's gone into the playoffs, and it has really been in his head that, we are a contender this year.
Yeah.
Last year, all the boys said, we feel like we can win, and Landeskog said going into the playoffs last year we were happy to be here, but now we're here to win. And they meant that to an extent, but really last year we didn't look at the Avs as an 8 seed and say, this is one of the true contenders in the NHL. This year that has changed. The Avalanche, when you're talking about the top 5 contenders in the NHL, you can't leave the Avalanche off that list. No. They're an absolute juggernaut out west.
Probably not even top 3. I mean, if we're being honest here, guys.
There's an argument to be made that they're the favorite in the West. I mean, I know technically St. Louis did finish as the 1 seed. Vegas made a lot of noise, but there is a strong argument to be made that the Avalanche are the favorite to win the West.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out in the round robin games here.
Definitely.
And I have faith in the boys.
I do too.
As does Avs Nation, I feel like, so.
We're not on our sports pod right now, so we aren't doing our bet segment. But I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to the DraftKings odds on the Avalanche to win the 1 seed in the West has been boosted to plus 250. And I think that's a nice bet to take. Avalanche like to come out swinging early in years. This is kind of right off the offseason. There's a good chance they win their first 3 games, or at least 2 of them, and get lucky with some tiebreakers I would not be surprised to see the Avs get the 1 seed. I think that they're pretty likely to do so. So a little odds boost for any of you sports bettors out there that might be interesting.
Absolutely. But yeah, guys,
So,
this is going to be fun.
This is exciting. The one thing that I cannot wait for more than anything else, playoff overtime. There is nothing in sports to me better than NHL playoff overtime. And last night I was just watching some old highlights, particularly of last year. The McKinnon breakaway goal in Calgary, the Rantanen one-timer, Landeskog's little tap-in from Makar on the point. Just Moser going crazy on the calls. There's nothing quite like watching Avalanche playoff overtime, and I cannot wait for that. We're going to have to wait a little bit longer since we're not in the play-in. We're doing the round robin, so maybe a couple weeks here before we'll really get to see that rolling in full force. But I would have to say that might be number one on my list of the things that I just cannot wait for.
Oh, yeah. Dude, just your adrenaline. One image that is absolutely, like, ingrained in my brain is McKinnon's, like, expression with the boys after he scored the overtime game-winning goal in Game 2. With an absolute snipe, dude. Just, he was so excited, and that made me so happy.
For me, similar thing, it's Landeskog on the goal in Game 6 against San Jose, the one that forced Game 7, on the wall, just like overjoyed, hugging all the boys on the glass. Like, I can't wait to see this year's version of that. I really hope that we get to see some good overtime games. It's weird to say that. I want us to win the games. I don't necessarily want them to go to overtime, but I really want to watch the overtime.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good one. This is also just like a close-knit group of guys. I feel like all the boys just love each other. Although, like, even if McKinnon is super hard on them, I'm pretty sure, like, he's a good locker room guy, not like a Duchesne. Yeah. He just expects greatness, and that's kind of something that we've seen from a lot of the greats in sports history, really. Like, I mean, if you just watch The Last Dance, you know that for a fact with Michael Jordan, so... but yeah, so this is a close-knit group of guys, and Kadri just bought all the boys Gucci slides, so.
Yeah. The Gucci slides are what's going to win it for him. Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, you guys know from your playing days that it's always fun to play hockey. You love to play hockey, but there's something special about playing on that team. The one where, the one that when you look back, I feel like a lot of people have that one team that they remember above all others, and the one where all the boys just loved each other. The one 10 years later that you still meet up with the boys from time to time. And I feel like that's what this Avs group is. This is that team for them. This is the one where they just love each other. They love playing for each other. Like you said, McKinnon's hard on the boys, and they still love him for it, because he does it in the right way.
Yeah. And it's not like he's not deserving to do that. It's like
exactly
Hart Trophy finalist 2 out of the last 3 years. So I mean, he leads in a different type of way that Landeskog does. And that's good to have.
Exactly. And McKinnon will never be a captain as long as Landeskog is on the team. But he would be a very good captain. He's a good leader. It's a role he's well suited for. And if it weren't for the fact that we have Landeskog, who might be like the cookie cutter perfect captain in Colorado, then McKinnon could be a great captain.
Yeah. I mean, Landeskog, like he's gonna. There's a reason that he's still captain after going through the 48-point season. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, boys. We're pretty deep into the pod today. Are there any other last things you guys want to touch on before we do get out of here for today?
Nothing from me. Zach might have something to say here.
Yeah, I'm excited for Cale Makar to win the Calder.
Cale Makar for Calder, yeah, definitely. So I want to let our viewers know we're not 100% set yet, but we're fairly certain that this Sunday in that St. Louis game, the return to play game, we will be doing kind of a live stream watch party online. So we'll go live on YouTube when the game starts. We'll be watching the game, and we just want to have a place for kind of everyone to hang out, Avs fans to hang out, talk hockey while we all watch the game together. Can't have a lot of the bars can't really have their watch parties, or I know some of them are, but with limited spacing. But we want to do a watch party for all the Avs fans anyway, so we're going to be doing it. Just hang out in the YouTube live chat while we're live watching the game. You can kind of see us react to it live while we talk to some of you guys, and it'll be a great place to hang out.
Yeah. Just come join us, boys.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone for watching. Like I said, check out our live stream. Also, check out some of our other podcasts. I've mentioned the sports one a couple times in this episode. We've got quite a bit of crossover, so if you like some other sports, watch us talk about those as well. We've got a Top 10s podcast that I like. I think it's one of our most fun ones to record, and I hope that our viewers enjoy it as well. So check those out, and we will see you in our next episode.